Hello everyone. In this video, we will be reading and discussing the second part of the chapter, A Bicycle in Good Repair. In the previous part, we read how the narrator and his friend made a plan of going on a long bicycle ride. But that plan never comes into action, as the friend feels that narrator's bicycle has a wobbly front wheel. Then he asks the narrator to bring him a hammer so that he can begin his task of repairing the bicycle. However, the task doesn't proceed as it was planned. He ends up making a bigger mess of the things by losing parts of the bicycle. In this video, we will begin the second part of the story. He then said that while he was about it, he would see to the chain for me, and at once began taking off the gear case. I did try to dissuade him from that. I told him what an experienced friend of mine once said to me solemnly: if anything goes wrong with your gear case, sell the machine and buy a new one. It comes cheaper. After losing the metal balls, the friend says that he will continue to repair the bicycle, and while he is at it, he will repair the chain too. After saying this, he starts taking off the gear case. The narrator tries to stop him from messing with the gear case. He tells him about the advice of his experienced friend who once said that if there is a problem with the gear case, then you must buy a new machine because it will be cheaper. He said, people talk like that who understand nothing about machines. Nothing is easier than taking off a gear case. So the friend refuses to accept that the task of removing a gear case can be difficult, and he further implies that people who know nothing about machines tend to say things like that. I had to confess, he was right. In less than 5 minutes, he had the gear case in two pieces, lying on the path, and was groveling for screws. He said it was always a mystery to him, the way screws disappeared. So, the friend has now successfully taken apart the gear case, and it was lying on the ground. But there was a problem. All the screws of the gear case had disappeared. It is very ironical how the friend had earlier said that people talk like that who understand nothing about machines. So, the people who do not know about the mechanism of a machine tend to bluff that they know everything about it. But in this chapter, he is the only one who has been bluffing about knowing the mechanism of a bicycle. In his task of repairing the bicycle, he has only ruined it further. But he still speaks with confidence, as though he knows what he is doing. Common sense continued to whisper to me, stop him before he does any more mischief. You have a right to protect your own property from the ravages of a lunatic. Take him by the scruff of the neck and kick him out of the gate. So, the narrator is now thinking that it's high time that I stop my friend from doing any more mischief. In place of mischief, we can also use the words playful misbehavior. It's about time that the narrator steps up and saves his property, meaning the bicycle, from the clutches of a lunatic. That would mean a mad person. The narrator also imagines that he should grab his friend by the neck and should kick him out of the gate. But I am weak when it comes to hurting other people's feeling, and I'll let him muddle on. He gave up looking for the rest of the screws. He said screws had a knack of turning up when you least expected them, and that now he would see to the chain. He tightened it till it would not move. Next, he loosened it until it was twice as loose as it was before. Then he said, we had better think about getting the front wheel back into its place again. Even though the narrator wanted to stop his friend from ruining his bicycle, he could not do it because he didn't want to hurt his feelings. So he let him continue. The situation of the bicycle was getting worse by the second. Now the friend had given up to look for the rest of the screws, which he had lost while unscrewing the gear case. Now he had shifted his whole attention to the chain. He tightened the chain till it would not move. Then he loosened it. Once the chain was ruined, he said that they should now focus on putting the front wheel back. I held the fork open and he worried with the wheel. So now both of them were trying to put the front wheel back in its place. The narrator held the fork open while his friend was dealing with the wheel. At the end of 10 minutes, I suggested he In this picture, we can clearly see how the narrator holds the fork of the bicycle and how his friend is trying to put the front wheel back in its place. At the end of 10 minutes, I suggested that he should hold the fork and that I should handle the wheel, and we changed places. Since the things were not working well, the narrator and his friend changed places. And now the narrator had the task to put the front wheel in its place. At length, we did get the thing into position, and the moment it was in the position, he burst out laughing. I said, "What's the joke?" He said, "Well, I'm an ass." It was the first thing he had said that made me respect him. I asked him what had led him to that discovery. Once the wheel was put back in its place, the friend starts laughing. When the narrator asks him about it, he replies that I'm a big idiot. The narrator instantly agreed with him and asked what had led him to that discovery. He said, "We have forgotten the balls." I looked for my hat. It was lying topsy-turvy in the middle of the path. He was of a cheerful disposition. He said, "Well, we must put back all we can find and trust to Providence." In the first part of the story, when the friend had taken out the front wheel from its place, many little balls rolled out of it. While putting the wheel back in its place, both the narrator and the friend had forgotten to place the metal balls in their right places. And when they had started looking for the balls, they found that they were lying in the middle of the path, as the hat in which they were kept was lying upside down. Even after all of this, the friend didn't lose his cheerful personality, and he said that they should trust the power of God and should put back everything, at least what they can find. We found 11. We fixed 6 on one side and 5 on the other, and half an hour later, the wheel was in its place again. It need hardly be added that it really did wobble now. A child might have noticed it. He said it would do for the present. So the wheel that was not wobbling initially was now wobbling so much that a child would have noticed it. I said, watching you do this is of real use to me. It is not only your skill that fascinates me, it is your cherry confidence in yourself, your inexplicable hopefulness that does me good. The narrator tells his friend that your confidence and your inexplicable hopefulness, that means hopefulness that cannot be explained, it really fascinates and motivates me. Even though the skills of his friend as a mechanic were still questionable, his confidence throughout the repairing process was commendable. Thus encouraged, he set to work to refix the gear case. He stood the bicycle against the house and worked from the offside. Then he stood it against a tree and worked from the onside. Then I held it for him while he lay on the ground with his head between the wheels and worked at it from below and dropped oil upon himself. Then he took it away from me and doubled himself across it till he lost his balance and slid over on to his head. After hearing the praise of the narrator, the friend was encouraged and he started working on the gear case. From then onwards, he kept this bicycle in different positions and started working on it from different directions. While working on the bicycle, he also lost his balance and hurt his head. Then he lost his temper and tried bullying the thing. The bicycle, I was glad to see, showed spirit, and the subsequent proceedings degenerated into little else than a rough and tumble fight between him and the machine. One moment the bicycle would be on the gravel path and he on top of it. The next, the position would be reversed. He on the gravel path, the bicycle on him. The task of repairing the bicycle was now taking a whole different turn. To the author, it looked as if his friend was having a full on fight with the bicycle. Now he would be standing, flushed with victory, the bicycle firmly fixed between his legs. But his triumph would be short lived. By a sudden quick movement, it would free itself and, turning upon him, hit him sharply over the head with one of its handles. During the fight, his bicycle and his friend were both evenly matched. At one moment, his friend would be winning, and in the next moment, the bicycle would turn everything around. During this hustle, his friend also got hit by one of the handles of the bicycle. At 1:45, dirty and disheveled, cut and bleeding, he said, "I think that will do," and rose and wiped his brow. The bicycle looked as if it also had had enough of it, which had received most punishment, it would have been difficult to say. I took him into the back kitchen, where, so far as was possible, he cleaned himself. Then I sent him home. By the time the fight between his friend and his bicycle stopped, his friend was all dirty and was also bleeding. And lastly, he said, "I think that will do." The narrator also found it difficult to understand who had received most injuries during this repairing, or should we say fight, between the bicycle and his friend. After this whole event, the narrator took his friend to the back kitchen and help him clean himself. Then he sent him home. After reading the story, we can understand that the title of the chapter was very ironical. The bicycle that was initially in good condition before the repair started was now in desperate need of good repair. So, this was our story, A Bicycle in Good Repair. I hope all of you liked this story.